games. I will give you the greatest games on earth.
Show them you can fight or die trying.
From the producers of 300.
A 4-horse race is a suicide.
Let the games begin!
Starring Oscar winner Anthony Hopkins.
Behold, this arena will be built for Rome.
Rise or die.
Those About to Die, a new Peacock original series streaming July 18th.
We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now.
It's Inauguration Day 2021 in the less than United States of America today. Let's take a moment to hope that cool heads prevail and that there is no more chaos or criminal activity to further stain what once was a shining symbol of peace and prosperity. Hi, I'm Chris May, host of This Day in Weather History, a podcast from the Weather Network in Canada. You know, the country attached to the north of the United States. Yeah, when they're arguing amongst each other, we hear everything. Anyway, today is a collection of stories from over the centuries and how the weather affected those ceremonies. Here is a spoiler alert. Total civil unrest will not appear here today, this day, in weather history. I could have started with an older, more historical event, but let's open with a real standout ceremony for a standout president-elect at its time and a ridiculously standout weather event that sent it all sideways. Have you ever heard of the January 1961 nor'easter? Yeah, probably not. Maybe you know it by its other moniker, the Kennedy Inauguration snowstorm. Yeah, that's the one. How does 8 inches over 20 centimeters of snow sound? That would cancel an outdoor party. That's what was dumped on the eve of John F. Kennedy's presidential inauguration. Kennedy's event took place on January 20th, 1961, this day in weather history, despite all the complications that were associated with this nor'easter. So just what happened? The center of the low was scraping up the coast, and by this time it was just east of the Delmarva Peninsula on the morning of the inauguration. As the system tracked due north, it continued to deepen. By daybreak, new fallen snow coated the nation's capital. Now, it was really not a major news story on any other day, as it was one of the lower totals from the affected areas by the nor'easter, but it was Inauguration Day for JFK. On the 19th, forecasts looked to show the snow changing to rain before changing back to snow overnight, but that rain part of the changeover plan never happened, and it just stayed as straight snow, no chaser. Although not a massive dumping, this is D.C. after all, and it was in lockdown for the biggest event of the past 4 years. This all played into huge traffic jams and vehicles that had to be abandoned. Over 1,400 cars were stranded right in the parade route along Pennsylvania Avenue. Soon I'll tell you how that got cleared up, and oh my, it's good. Aside from that, it was a beautiful, almost snow globe kind of morning, but the inauguration planners had a decidedly different view of things. Somehow, by an act of will and determination, the D.C. snow removal crews, with assistance from the Army Corps of Engineers, they got it done. They used front-end loaders, dump trucks, and even a scene from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where flamethrowers, that's right, flamethrowers, were used to clear snow from Pennsylvania Avenue. Hey, I guess whatever works to ensure a safe parade and ceremony. So while Kennedy's swearing-in ceremony ended up working out, it was not as fortunate for other events in the distant past. In 1841, it was tragic. President William Henry Harrison was not president very long, and all thanks to the weather. He was sworn into office on a cold and blustery day. After delivering a long speech, he caught a cold. But that deteriorated fast into full-blown pneumonia, and sadly from that, he died a month later. And believe it or not, sadly 12 years after that, it happened again. In 1853, when President Franklin Pierce was sworn in, his wife, the First Lady Abigail Fillmore, she caught a cold. And that cold developed into pneumonia, and she passed away shortly afterwards from it as well. In 1937, no lives were lost, thankfully, but the conditions were just as awful. It poured rain during the inauguration of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's second term. This actually marks the first time the event was held on January 20th, and that tradition has lived ever since. The temperatures dropped enough for the rain to transition over to freezing rain and ice pellets, and that dramatically thinned the crowd for the event. Throughout the day, Roosevelt, however, insisted on still going out and riding in that open car, despite it having a pool of water on the floor. All right, last one. There's a reason for this. It was in 1985, for President Ronald Reagan's second swearing in, that we finally decided enough was enough and we moved the ceremony indoors. This year would definitely have resulted in a lot of sick people from the extremes. The temperature at noon that day was a bone-shaking minus 13.8 degrees Celsius, with the wind chill making it feel closer to the minus 23 to minus 29 range. That obviously also canceled the parade. This day in weather history. Tomorrow, back in 1999, 127 tornadoes touched down across the Mississippi River Valley. On that January 21st, the U.S. Storm Prediction Center issued warnings for the states of Arkansas, Tennessee, Louisiana, and Mississippi. It was bad, and we will remember it together tomorrow on This Day in Weather History with me, your host, Chris May.